This week, the writing on the wall. Vandalism is on the rise at River and in schools across Washington.
This is our home. We want to keep this place looking like our homes.
Students say bathroom accessibility is becoming a major problem. Toilets ripped out, walls falling apart.
Someone tried to set the 500-wing bathroom on fire.
How did it get this bad? CR News speaks with building operator Gabe Bravo about a situation which has become increasingly costly.
Gotta get this to stop. This is getting out of hand around here.
We'll examine the fallout and the underlying issue at hand. Since Washington's legislature made disciplinary policy more lenient in public schools, some staff say students aren't facing enough consequences for destructive behavior. CR News chief anchor Tyme Sisakvanich joins me in studio to break down his recent reporting.
The laws that have been passed over these, couple years actually promote support over punishment.
Also, cleaning up the mess. River's RCA and Green Team are scheduling regular collections of recycling and litter around campus. Their efforts to make our school a more eco-friendly place for students to learn, and the recent bottle drive that's giving plastic a new purpose. Joining me for this week's Rapid Roundtable are Associate Principal Abby Davis, IB English and Theory of Knowledge teacher Jeni McAnally, River Cleaning Association President Conner Orr, and Jacob McManus, President of River's Green Team. Welcome to the conversation. It's the Rapids Report.
From CR News, this is the Rapids Report with Talan Collins.
And a good Wednesday afternoon. Talan is off this week. I'm Emmy McGill, and thank you for joining us as we examine yet another critical issue affecting the River community: vandalism, theft, and the motivation behind it all. The Vancouver Public Schools website claims that all students have the right to a, quote, an orderly and safe learning environment. But how does the district and our school truly guarantee this right when bathroom vandalism continues to prevent students from using the restroom? Unfortunately, what River students are experiencing are not isolated incidents. Many students probably remember a certain TikTok trend that went viral in 2021. Bathroom theft was promoted as a challenge by users on the app, often including the theft of restroom items like soap dispensers and mirrors. This fun trend had unfortunate consequences for schools. Disregard for the effects of bathroom vandalism have been on the rise ever since. 4 years after the trend went viral, River is still dealing with destruction of bathroom supplies and facilities, most commonly defacing stall doors and walls, or items such as cafeteria food, plastic wrappers, and vapes being flushed down toilets. They clog the plumbing systems, and pipes are bursting, causing flooding of the bathrooms and ultimately some bathroom closures. Vandalism has caused bathrooms at River to become both unsanitary and at times even unsafe. For instance, last year, building operator Gabe Bravo spoke with CR News about the severity of the problem, which he said was quickly, quote, getting out of hand.
Yeah, we've had too much vandalism here, to be perfectly honest with you. We've had 5 toilets broken in the last 2 years. Someone tried to set the 500-wing bathroom on fire. They're constantly breaking paper towel dispensers, soap dispensers. This type of stuff is, starts getting expensive for us, and you keep on destroying it. Why do I want to keep opening it up to you guys? So, and if you guys see something, say something. We got to get this to stop. This is getting out of hand around here at the school.
And beyond physical hazards, damaged school property can create a feeling of unease and insecurity in students and staff. Last month, I spoke with Associate Principal Abby Davis, who explained that our custodial and district maintenance teams don't have the time or resources to clean out drains at school every day. She says that the bathrooms being closed due to vandalism sets a bad precedent for River's reputation in our community. She'll join us later in our Rapid Roundtable discussion. We also reached out to VPS Assistant Board Director Kathy Decker, who addressed her thoughts on recent vandalism. She argues that, quote, students misbehave in both big and little ways. They do so for a variety of reasons. During a study exploring the motives behind school vandalism, the National Library of Medicine recorded that it is often triggered by the need for an emotional release. Decker also emphasizing the need for support-based behavioral correction as opposed to administrators resorting to direct disciplinary action. She refers to the, quote, need for more funding from the state legislature to hire counselors and behavioral specialists, recognizing that student misbehavior requires nuanced and well-informed response means recognizing that such responses require staffing and training. Without the staff and training, following best practices becomes difficult. It's clear that River doesn't have the resources it needs to truly combat the rising destruction of our school. Currently, regular bathroom sweeps, usually by security, are the primary precaution taken by River to ensure our facilities are being used appropriately. Promoting safety and cleanliness, they also check for out-of-stock supplies and potential health hazards. But without constant monitoring of the bathrooms, suspects of vandalism become difficult to catch. Just a few weeks ago, CR News chief anchor Tyme Sisakvanich re-examined the status of vandalism in our restrooms.
In the last 3 years, Washington State high schools have seen a rise in vandalism, especially in bathrooms. Columbia River High School is no exception. Common scenes during a quick trip to the restroom include vapes lodged in toilets, profane graffiti, as well as the destruction of stalls and soap dispensers.
Some of the things that are done can be really degrading and inappropriate, and I think that definitely doesn't set a good example or a good outlook for our school.
However, an ordinary custodian's work isn't enough to clean this mess. According to Sierra building operator Gabe Bravo, plumbers and drain technicians are called in up to 3 times a month.
I feel like our resources could be used elsewhere other than having to deal with the same nonsense over and over again.
According to the Washington State Legislature, vandalism caused by students currently subject them to a short period of suspension. But the question remains, is this approach really enough to mitigate the damage, or should the state legislature be revised to allow for further disciplinary action?
All the money that's costing the district to repair all this stuff, I feel like monetarily, there should be some type of repercussions.
I know they can't really reprimand the kids as much anymore due to certain precautions, but whatever they can do, I fully support, just trying to dial it in.
Joining me now on set is CR News chief anchor Tyme Sisakvanich. Welcome back to the Rapids Report. I want to start off with, you've talked about the Washington State policy dictating that any student who defaces or damages school property can face suspension and punishment. How does Washington State law structure the disciplinary process for student vandalism? And what role do individual districts, like our own, play in interpreting and implementing these policies?
Yeah, so like you said, vandalism, when a student is caught vandalizing, they're subject to suspension and punishment. And basically how the Washington legislature structures this is that damages exceeding $1,000 actually lead to the student having their diploma withheld for the earlier of either 5 years from graduation or until that amount owed is less than $1,000. If they're unable to pay that, they must provide community service that is paid with minimum wage until amount owed is also less than $1,000.
And how have Washington State laws and policies on school discipline evolved over the years? And what recent legislative efforts have been made to refine these policies?
Yeah, so the laws that have been passed over these couple years actually promote support over punishment. And for example, in terms of substance use, it's eliminating zero tolerance and reducing exclusionary discipline. And I think that's, a more progressive way to address the issue.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me. Up next, I'll be joined by this week's Rapid Roundtable to discuss the impacts of the problem we're dealing with, but more importantly, what students can and are doing about it. That's next. Welcome back. Joining me now for this week's Rapid Roundtable are Associate Principal Abby Davis, IB English and Theory of Knowledge teacher Jeni McAnally, River Cleaning Association President Conner Orr, and Jacob McManus, President of River's Green Team. Thank you all for joining me today. I want to direct this first question to Ms. McAnally. Ms. Davis, what should prioritizing learning look like in terms of school discipline?
How can we maintain access for students while limiting the time out of the classroom, but also holding students accountable for behavior and actions that are the opposite of our expectations here at River?
I think similarly in the classroom, the way I like to prioritize learning and dealing with discipline is really about a lot of it is about building relationships so that when you have mutual respect, people will want to do well for themselves in that space. So I prioritize learning by kind of creating that mutual respect with students the best I can.
And Ms. Davis, what challenges do administrators face when trying to balance the need for security with students' rights to privacy and fair treatment?
Oftentimes students will tell me or tell the rest of our administration, it doesn't seem like you're doing anything. And one of the first things that we have to talk about is the confidentiality with conversations we're having with students and families related to teaching and responding to behavior issues. But at the same time, we also want to ensure safety, right? And so including in terms of the security here in this question, I don't know if it's intended this way, but I'm talking about our security team and the work that they do to be very vigilant, to be checking in on restrooms, checking hallways, checking kind of corners of campus to ensure that we have a safe campus in general. And then working collaboratively with administration to report concerns that we have. I think we work well as a team to do that while maintaining the rights of students to due process. That's really important too, is to hear from students' side of how things happened and kind of fact find before we hand out discipline or corrective action.
I want to open up this next question to Conner and Jacob. If River were to hold an open discussion on vandalism, what perspectives do you think would emerge from students?
The majority of students, they would all agree that it's not good what's going on in school, like for example in the bathrooms with the vandalism going on there. But I also think there's a lack of accountability with some of the student body because there are a certain group of students from all grades that are vandalizing and they're getting away with it every day. So I think if there was a discussion with all students, between most of the student body, there would be an agreement that it is an issue, and with a lot of the other students, I think there would be a sense of avoidance of their action and taking part in the vandalism.
There's a lot of people who say that there would be a change need to be made, and there's a lot of people who recognize that that's a problem, but at the end of the day, they're not going to do anything about it. And I think that's one of the biggest problems. And so, although I think that this discussion, and if we were to have a panel on it, I think it could be effective in some regard to seeing how we could possibly fix the situation or implement new strategies into trying to mitigate the effects. I think a lot of it, I'm not sure how necessarily effective it would be in the sense that I feel like a lot of people, they say a lot that they're going to do a lot and then not a lot actually gets done. And it's the people that actually want to make a difference that have to step up and lead this, or else nothing is really going to get done.
Ms. McAnally, has vandalism in school bathrooms impacted your daily routine as a teacher? And what kind of concerns have students told you regarding their frustrations with the condition of the bathrooms?
Well, I'll take the first one first. It definitely interferes with my daily routine as a teacher whose classroom is closest to the 600 hallway bathroom. It is a constant dance of me trying to deliver instruction and engage with students and stop what I'm doing to go out into the hallway to interrupt students who are not where they're supposed to be and doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. Mr. McDonald right next door to me, Echo, who will use the affinity room, Miss Freeland or Miss Ferguson from the media center. We often are all pulled away from the job that we're here to do in engaging with students in meaningful ways to to have to go intervene in unsavory behaviors. So that is definitely a disruption to my workday and interrupts my time, my valuable time with my students. I don't get a lot of time with them. So it's very frustrating to have to constantly be either closing my door or going out to say, hi folks, I need you to move on to where you're supposed to be. And then there's often a pretty typical response that's not usually very conducive to mutual respect, which I brought up earlier. The other is that students have told me that they don't want to go to the bathroom. They feel unsafe going to the bathroom. I think things are a little bit better with the doors propped open now in the 600 hallway because I haven't heard as much concern about personal safety going into the bathroom. But that in the past has been an issue where people didn't want to go in there because they just don't know what they're going to find when they open that door, and if they go in, if they're going to feel threatened or chased out. There were times that I've been here that people have said that they felt more comfortable going outdoors and going to the bathroom in an open space rather than the relative unsafe space of our bathrooms, which is really not acceptable.
And Ms. Davis, if you had unlimited resources for support, what would be your ideal strategy for eliminating vandalism in Rivers bathrooms?
I love this question because unlimited resources would be amazing. Honestly, I would remodel our bathrooms. I don't love that they are multi-use, that there are multiple stalls or urinals and sinks, and because that just invites large numbers of students during passing, at lunch, during class, right? So if I had unlimited resources, I would remodel our bathrooms to be single use, and they would, have a closed door. But that would be one thing that I would do. If I had unlimited resources in our current model, we would have more security. We would have more administration. As you know, Ms. McAnally is referencing the 600 wing. There are not administrative offices out in that area. And so oftentimes by the time we get a call to be in that particular space, the students have gone. They've disappeared. They're not there anymore. And so being able to address things in the moment is a lot easier to handle and hold students accountable than getting to it when we can, whether we have to cross campus or something like that. So those were two very different things, but I do love the idea of single-use restrooms in schools. I think that eliminates a lot of problems that schools would see across the board. So I'd be in favor of that.
Conner, as the president of the River Cleaning Association, how does it affect club morale when, despite your efforts to clean up the school, students continue to litter and disrupt the cleanliness of school property?
In terms of our morale, I would say in a way it doesn't really disrupt our morale because it's almost an expectation at this point that this is going to happen. I mean, obviously, yes, it sucks when you put on this work. I mean, we do sometimes hour to an hour and a half cleanups, literally just focused on the back senior lot, just that one small portion, because people, especially back there, it's terrible. Especially in the shrubs, they just throw alcohol bottles and we've seen a bunch of other stuff like condoms and just terrible things and things that really shouldn't be there. And it really does suck having to go there every single week, or at least every other week whenever we decide to go clean it up, and then just seeing that pretty much all the work we just put in, it's just thrown right back out there. It's basically like we threw it in the trash and they took it out of the trash and just threw it right back in. However, I would say in a way it doesn't really change our morale. We're still motivated and disciplined enough to go keep cleaning it up, but it definitely is a problem that does need to be addressed, because it's almost like if we keep cleaning up after people keep throwing things on the ground, they're just going to keep doing it because they know, they're just going to clean it up.
And do you think getting more students involved in activities like cleaning the school would promote awareness of the severity of issues like vandalism?
I think it would, and I know that's the obvious answer, but I don't think that people really truly understand how bad the situation is, and I think it also comes from a lack. I've done a lot of research on this. I will admit that our club did start because my friend Nathan and I, we needed to do a senior project. However, ever since 8th grade, learning about environmental science, I've been really involved and just interested in learning about the health of nature. But I think it would, because I think it would help promote awareness, because there's a lot of people who don't understand the effects that it can have on the environment. And there's also another thing is that I learned also is just that a lot of people, they don't really care, because it's not their personal space. They just view it as a place someone else will clean up for me, or it's not my room, so I don't really care. And it's even small things. I would say on campus, it's not as bad as like at the parking lots. But even then, like, I think one of the craziest things that I always find is whenever we're cleaning up, especially, you'll see so much trash around the trash can, but not actually in it. And it's just, it's disgusting. And it's also really bad with just like small things like pieces of gum. Like there's gum literally everywhere on the campus. If you go out there, look just around one trash can, you'll see like 10 pieces that made it to the trash can, but not in the trash can. And so I think it would help people kind of see how bad the issue truly is and how, I guess in a way, disgusting our school actually kind of is.
And Jacob, how is vandalism affecting the school's sustainability efforts? And what solutions do you think could help improve the situation?
Vandalism is affecting the school's sustainability efforts, not necessarily with like what we're able to achieve, but more so in the sentiment of the effect it's going to have on the school or the community. And I just think thinking about, like just going back to what Conner said earlier about expectations and how the RCA club has an expectation that trash is going to keep being thrown in. People are just aren't going to stop doing it. And they have that realization based on their past experiences this school year doing their river cleanups. And that expectation that it's more so like the vandalism is more indicative of maybe a broader theme of how people have this outlook on things aren't going to get better, or like in regards to the climate crisis with the theatrics going on there's this sort of doomsday mentality that some people have, a lot of people have, and it's that negative outlook that can maybe affect people not wanting to care more or be more aware of these issues going on in the community or at our school or globally and internationally. So I think that, you know, a solution, and the most important solution I think, and just through what I've talked with other people, is to promote an optimism for the future. Because when someone believes that it will get better, like the school will get better in the future, or the climate crisis will get better and we'll get back on track, you know, to being only 1.5 degrees above, you know, where we were 100 years ago. To have that optimism that the change is coming for the better, and to really instill that belief into a greater community or into a school, it brings people together because they know if we work towards this goal, we can achieve it and we can do it. And I think that, like, I just go back to the river cleanup because it's just a very like tangible, real, you know, physical realization of this belief system where these people don't believe that litter is going to get better, and they don't believe that the world or the community or river is going to ever be super clean, so why should I care? And I think that is a sentiment that a lot of students have, is just that nothing, it doesn't really matter. It's not like anything's going to be better in the future. So I just think the solution that, like, at least as of right now, like our green team, we're making a mural out of bottle caps of the globe to just promote the message that we can do this, like change is possible if you believe. And so I think the greatest solution is just to spread that optimism for our community and internationally.
And Ms. McAnally, as an educator, how do you think vandalism affects the school environment as a whole? Does it contribute to a larger culture of disrespect, or do you see it more as an isolated event? And adding on to that, do you believe that repeated vandalism leads to a lack of trust between students and staff?
I don't think it's an isolated issue, for sure. I mean, this is a pattern of behavior. This is my 20th year at Columbia River, so I've seen the ebbs and flows of different waves of student body, I don't know, just like a pride in our campus, and then other times where that sort of wanes. Definitely post-COVID, I think the world just feels a little harder to be in, and in that way, I think it's hard for people to feel connections to one another, to their space. So it's not isolated. This is definitely a long-term situation, and I think I would be cautious. I don't know, I'd be interested in what you guys have to say. I would be cautious to call it disrespect. I think that feels like a judgment that doesn't take into consideration why people do what they do, and then I think it paints people with a broad brush that may not be relevant to all people. I think sometimes people do things that are bad for our local environment because they don't feel like there's any reason to take care of it, or they don't feel a sense of belonging, or they don't feel like they have any stake in what this place is or will be. And I loved what Jacob said about creating an atmosphere and a culture of optimism, because then when you think about what comes after you, if you feel hopeful, then you feel more inclined to make investments that won't affect you. So I would be very hesitant to call it disrespect. I think there are individuals who act very disrespectfully, to be clear. But I think to paint all people who make poor decisions about how they maintain their space as disrespect is kind of has some cultural bias in it that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So I would say, or a lot uncomfortable. So I would say I wouldn't say disrespect. How I think it affects our environment, I mean, this is a place, I spend more waking hours in room 610 and in this building than I do in my own home. So this is a place I love to be. And so I try to keep my space a place that feels pleasant and lovely to be in, because it affects my mentality. It affects how I feel about my work. It affects how students feel when they arrive in my space. Outside of my space, it's very difficult when I'm encountering a lot of trash or vandalism or tagging or broken things that we all benefit from using. So I think the way it affects our environment is it can be really demoralizing to leave the space of my room and go out into a space where people have not maintained the use of things that we all share so that other people also can use them.
And Ms. Davis, in a prior interview, you mentioned that vandalism can negatively affect the way the community views our school. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. So that for me was a twofold statement, kind of two things. So first and foremost, as an administrator, I often field emails or phone calls from concerned parents, right, stating my child hasn't had access to a restroom close to their classroom for this week. They are concerned about bullying happening in the bathroom. They don't want to use the bathroom. They don't like to use the restrooms because students are vaping or doing other kind of smoking related behaviors. And it just creates an unsafe situation for students, right? And so that's not a good look for our parents and for our community members who support their students or their grand students or something in the building. And so there's that piece. First and foremost, working with our families in creating a safe feeling for their kids to be able to access bathrooms. Secondarily, as you guys know, a couple athletes here on the panel, we have a lot of athletic competitions that go on in our building, outside our building, on our campus. And it's really crummy when we have to close restrooms because they have been vandalized or there's plumbing issues or there's broken toilets, because then our community members don't have access. And it's pretty crummy for a community member to come into a basketball game and not be able to use either, male or female restrooms because there are broken parts or, it's just not clean. And so that doesn't look good for us. And we have amazing sports teams and we have a beautiful campus. And we want to make sure that we're, allowing patrons from all over and stakeholders to access our building as they should be able to.
That should be the fuel that you all need to turn to your peers and say, that's not acceptable. We don't do that. Like, your behavior in this way affects not just you in this moment of having a good laugh, but it affects our other programming. So I would never underestimate the value of students holding each other accountable in safe ways. But to speak up and to say, we don't do that. That's not acceptable.
Well, thank you all again for joining me on the show. That is our show for this week. I'm Emmy McGill. Talan Collins will be back for our next episode for his last show as the program's moderator, along with an exclusive interview. Stay tuned. As always, the conversation continues, because here at CR News, the Rapids report.
Hey Rapids, thanks for helping us reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. If you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the CRTV YouTube channel to support content for and by CR students. Thanks for watching.